Also, I mean, that's interesting because, I mean, there's also the sense of, especially when you talk about the developmental issues and the question of bringing development to a group, to an, especially an isolated kind of culture, etc. And that is where, for instance, and even going back to the title of your talk, the whole idea that it is a colonial project, the idea that roads, in some sense, where an intervention that is outside a people and its culture, and therefore the idea of tyranny that is there in the title of your talk. But from the point of view of the filmmakers here that we were looking at, these four filmmakers, how do you think they understood this idea of either a potentially tyrannical kind of project, and what do you think would have been their challenge as filmmakers to portray these particular projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and I'm glad you asked it in that way because I was really thinking about this question of the voiceover, and what is the role of the voiceover, and it's an extremely tyrannical mode of doing filmmaking. And you see, I think it's very it's very distinctive in the Bhutan Road film, right? My favorite line, I think, is the jeep slowly takes in the gradient, and this is Panjo's voice speaking while he comes down the road home to his village. And so I think that that it is, in terms of filmmaking, the films really deal with many different complications, right? It has to talk about modernity as internal, modernity as something that we want, that we are doing, we are building for ourselves. And all of this is ventriloquized through the object and through the people, through the act of building. Labor, they go out of their way to make the point that we are building these roads for ourselves with our own hands, for the places we love, made out of our own. But then there's the visual, and you cannot take away how the visual of labor working on these mountains with minimal equipment, not wearing shoes, without hats sometimes, all these scenes. And then, you have these engineers come in with these big machines, and then, and the machines make our work easier, as if that was a small thing. It was as if that were a small thing. Yeah,
I mean, the thing about the voiceover is interesting. I mean, especially the two films, interestingly, I mean, the voiceover is the second film, the voiceover is in Hindi, and the Bhutan film that you're referring to with Pancho, is the voiceover is in English, and they're both by the same person. It's Zulvilani's voice. Why do you think? I mean, what does English have to do with Pancho in that particular film? I mean, is there a particular decision that would have been taken, you think? Is it to signify the foreignness of the Bhutanese, or is it to suggest that there is a kind of universal truth to what we are talking about in these projects?
This is, of course, open to speculation, and you should tell me what you think as well, because I don't know why they chose English for that one. I do think my feeling from watching the film is that the voiceover is very much for the audience and which audience it's speaking to. It is the subjectivity of the audience that is in question here. That can you be given the position? Can you be given the subjectivity of a naive observer of technology? Can you look at this mountain and feel this sort of technological sublime and forget that you are coming into this from a colonial perspective, as an Indian viewer? I don't know. What do you think? Like, what does English do? And, I was talking to Mukul, and the films alternate, right? There's English, Hindi, and both languages have very different tones. Like, they have a very different sense when you watch the films. I don't know, what do you think?
No, you're right. I mean, it might be a good moment actually to open up the discussion to sorry. Well, even the mic is telling me this. So I do have a couple of more questions also to continue with, but audiences if there are any questions or observations or thoughts.